If you defend for a long time, you will lose. Even though Danzo's swordsmanship is exquisite to the extreme, he still can't stand the crazy attack of this #1 physical skill. The hand holding the weapon trembled from the shock, and the tiger's mouth was slightly split. If this goes on like this, when my physical strength and chakra are exhausted to the same extent, then I will be in trouble. After blocking another attack from Raikage again, Danzo Lima drew a distance away, panting heavily, his eyes firmly locked on Raikage not far away, thinking secretly. Stinky boy, you are the only ninja in the younger generation who can fight me to this extent. Lei Yingai's tone was slightly surprised, and the high-speed movement paused for a moment, and the inside of the big pit was scorched black. He looked down at his palm, which was covered with large and small wounds, and sighed a little. However, the more outstanding, the stronger his killing intent. Before you die, let's experience the strongest form of Kai of Thunder Tunnel. This is a move that even your teacher has to avoid. The rough voice echoed throughout the battlefield, and the affirmation in the tone seemed to sentence the opponent to death. The black hair stood upside down, and the top burst out, revealing a muscular upper body. The ground trembled, and the already dilapidated ground was hit again, with cracks arranged like spider webs. In Danzo's perception, Ai's chakra intensity has been raised to a higher level again. Swish. Ai's speed appeared in front of Danzo at an extremely fast speed. Even though Danzo's speed could keep up with Raikage, there was nothing he could do. He understood that once he hid, what would the roots behind him do? He could only grit his teeth and face this move that was enough to destroy a hill. The horizontal knife stood in front of the chest, and 2 fingers hit the knife with extremely strong penetrating power. Zanpakuto let out a mournful cry, and under the huge force, the body hit the ground, smashing hundreds of meters of rock along the way, and forcibly plowed out a long corridor. With one blow, the situation changed and he fell directly into a disadvantage. Gaining power is not forgiving. A cruel light flashed in Lei Ying's eyes, his figure disappeared in place, and he slashed down with a knife in his hand, intending to solve the serious problem of this future cloud ninja here. Thunderplow hot knife. In his hands, even an ordinary physical technique can explode with great power, let alone this A-level physical technique. The dazzling thunderlight illuminates his face, and his eyes are full of murderous intent. As long as this move is actually hit, the battle will be completely over. And Danzo was lying on the ground, feeling the numbness from his body. The veins on his forehead were bulging, and his body couldn't move even though he roared in his heart. Move me. The blue light illuminated by the pupil is beautiful and dangerous, and death hangs around him. The people behind him also saw Danzo's dangerous situation at this time, and their anxiety was beyond words. Mizuki Yuma looked at everyone with a firm expression. Everyone, the time has come for the ministers to need us, form an array. Hearing his words, everyone's heart was shaken, their bodies subconsciously lined up according to the formation. The sound of drawing swords was heard everywhere, and their energy gathered in one place. In any case, it was the strongest move they could make. Flying fish array. Get up. Feeling that everyone's breath was connected together, Mizuki Yuma stared closely at Raikage who was attacking Danzo, and swung his knife vigorously, like a madman. The invisible saber chi emanated from his hand, slashed towards Raikage at an extremely fast speed, past Danzo's ear, and whizzed away. HMPH, worm carving trick. Facing the move released by the joint efforts of everyone at the root, Raikage cast a disdainful glance, and continued to rush towards Danzo lying on the ground regardless of the saber aura. The sword chi struck Raikage with the sound of piercing the air, causing his attack to slow down slightly. Mizuki Yuma panted heavily, and said with a smile, "Successful?" All the roots looked at the hit position with hope, and the smoke filled the air, as if it really blocked it. But, will I, who is the shadow of a village, really be solved so easily? A blue light appeared in the smoke, and a figure rushed out from it. Swish. Sure enough, that blue figure was Lei Ying, and judging by his appearance, the attack just now did not cause him any harm at all. Barely, it's a bit powerful, but if you want to force me back with this move, you're underestimating me. He raised his hand to wipe the blood oozing from a small wound on his face, then ignored it, and focused his eyes on Danzo. I saw that Danzo, who was lying on the ground and could not move, had stood up, with blood streaming down his face, and grinned at him with an extremely serious expression. Huh. I can finally move my hands, take my strongest move, Raikage. Hearing his words, Lei Ying's expression couldn't help becoming serious. The kid in front of him is not weak, so what should his strongest move be? silently took out a handful of kunai from the ninja bag, cut open his palm, and slammed it to the ground. The strongest psychic art, teacher help, bang. As a puff of white smoke dissipated, Senju Tobarama appeared on the spot, and the flying thunder god kunai in his hand kept throwing upwards. Seeing Danzo's distressed appearance, his eyes became extremely dangerous, and he looked at Reikage in the sky with a smile on his face. Is it you, an old bastard, who is bullying my apprentice? At this moment, Lei Ying only felt his heart tremble, sweat kept flowing from his forehead, and the arrogance on his face had disappeared. After all, the person in front of him is 1,000 hands. The muscles of the whole body were tense, and his eyes were fixed on the white-haired man in front of him. Chakra surged wildly, ready to strike at any time, which was completely different from the previous appearance when facing Danzo. This is the second generation of Hokage, the deterrent power of the 1,000 hands. Thousands of hands, what are you doing? From the corner of the eye, he caught sight of the flying thunder god kunai in Danzo's hand, and suddenly realized, his tone was extremely sarcastic. Hey, the young one was beaten, and the old one came. Shimura Danzo, thanks to the old man who praised you just now as a famous strongman in the ninja world, I didn't expect it. Silently standing behind his teacher, he leaned out, stretched out his palm, bent down 4 fingers, leaving only 1 finger, and said mockingly. Hey, the old bullies the juniors and doesn't allow the juniors to call you. You are a handsome man, a bearded old thief. There is such a shameless person like you in the world. Reikage, who wanted to use some provocative methods, was directly stunned, his face turned blue and white, and he was a little speechless, so he could only point his finger at Danzo. You. In the end, he really couldn't think of any words to refute, so he shook his hands, snorted coldly, and looked at Senju Tobarama who was standing beside him with arms folded. Tobarama, is this how you teach your apprentices to talk to their elders? He raised his brows, pondered for a moment, stared at Lei Ying, the corners of his mouth curled up, and said word by word. I think what my apprentice said is very good. Lei Ying, who was attacked by both master and apprentice at the same time, suddenly became angry. It really wasn't that the whole family refused to enter the house, but he actually hoped that the famous old fox in Senjubajian would speak seriously. He was really out of his mind. If you want to fight, come and fight, I will accompany you whatever you want. Looking around, looking at the state of the root crowd behind him and the coalition ninjas who were faintly surrounded, he understood the current situation. Tobarama drew his hand behind his back, and the sword of Thunder God appeared in his hand. The pale yellow light slightly illuminated the surrounding area, and the tip of the sword pointed at Lei Ying, with a serious tone. Seeing his strong appearance, and most of the coalition ninjas around him are cloud ninjas, once this kind of cage-level battle starts, they will definitely be involved, and in the end it will only weaken the strength of their own village. Damn it, if there are more ninjas in the other 2 villages, see if I can beat you. Even if I can't do anything to you, I can reduce the power of Iwanin and Mistnin. Tsuchikage and the others can't blame anything. I was so angry in my heart that I forcibly suppressed the anger in my heart and forced a smile. Where is it? Since you came to Tobarama in person, the old man has to give you face anyway. Humph. Putting away the Thunder God's sword in his hand, he signaled the root ninjas around him to evacuate with his eyes. The flying Thunder God technique can't take so many people. Seeing Master Hokage personally escorting them, all the root ninjas swaggered towards the blockade formed by the coalition ninjas. A few unruly root ninjas deliberately bumped into the coalition ninjas blocking the way, seeing their angry and helpless appearance, laughed and walked away. After all the Konoha ninjas disappeared, Tagama took Danzo to evacuate. Master Reikage, is Konoha ninja allowed to be so arrogant? Seeing the mocking appearance of the root ninja just now, the coalition ninja beside him was so angry that he said to Reikage with red eyes. Looking at the IWA ninja's forehead guard on the head of the talking ninja, the anger in Reikage's heart exploded, and his murderous aura was released. He stared at him and said coldly. I, Lei Ying, have acted all my life, why should I explain to you? The ninja who was stared at was so frightened by the huge murderous aura that his back was sweating. He quickly lowered his head, and after seeing that he was afraid to speak, he turned around and told Yun ninja beside him, and then strode away. Send me an order, contact Toying and Shuiying, and try to contain them. But the expression after turning around is intriguing, eyes slightly narrowed, looking in the direction of the frontal battlefield, and the corners of his mouth curled up. It's a good idea to want my sons of Yunin to die in vain. Now that they have been notified, they won't be able to find anything to say later. As for whether they can be blocked, just kidding, just a decent word. Besides, According to the plan, Qian Sho Tobarama was held back by them on the frontal battlefield. Why did he appear here? If they tried their best to block it, even if he had the flying thunder god technique, he would not be able to escape. Everyone is each other, laughing at 50 steps. Teacher, is it really okay for us to swagger like this? Danzo hopped onto the branch of the big tree, turned his head and looked at the leisurely running door beside him, and asked a little puzzled. Hey, I originally thought that the enemy's coalition forces have twice the number of ours, and it will be much more difficult to fight now. Now it seems. Thinking of Mizukage and Dokage paddling wildly on the front line, I couldn't help laughing. They really have their own plans. They not only want to destroy the enemy Konoha, but also want to consume the strength of their allies in the process. The ending is that several of my shadow clones fought back and forth with the two shadows. The scene was so grand, with all kinds of advanced ninjutsu emerging one after another, and as a result, none of my shadow clones had anything to do. His thoughts turned, his eyes wandered into the distance, and his lips parted slightly. Danzo, remember, the power of one fist is always greater than the power of 10 fingers. Hearing this sentence, Danzo nodded thoughtfully. Danzo-sama is really my Konoha pillar. The root ninjas with less than 100 people dared to rush to the heavily defended coalition defense line, and brought back one of them without falling. I heard that even Raikage could not stop them when they went into battle. Hey, if I get to the root, I'm not weaker than them. Anyway, Danzo-sama is there, it's just a waste of credit. On the temporary deployment platform, the Konoha ninjas who were resting in the whole battalion formed a circle and looked at the Genbu Zunren who had been rewarded inside, with different expressions, including admiration, envy, and jealousy. But when he looked at the man standing at the top of the root ninja, only trust remained. From the mouths of some captured coalition ninjas, Danzo simply played the coalition ninjas around, and dared to continue to attack with less than 100 troops. What's more frightening is that every attack of his is like a powerful and unconstrained style, you never know where he will appear, like a ghost on the battlefield. This last time, the coalition forces were so annoyed that they couldn't bear it. Regardless of the frontal battlefield, they directly deployed a large number of ninja carpet searches, blocking all the way out of Danzo. But he was almost rushed out by him. Under such extreme circumstances, he was able to set up a suspicious strategy in a short time to lure Lei Ying to go to other places. If they hadn't been forced to hold back with 5 times their number of troops, they might have been run away by Danzo and the others, without even having to use the summoning card. Yuma Mizuki stepped forward first, with a mask of a dog and an eagle pattern on his face, and a Tibetan character engraved between his eyebrows. He is also the root ninja who killed the most people in this mission besides Danzo. Hawkdog. Kill 10 enemies on the battlefield. Award a level ninjutsu 2, 200 million taels of silver ticket. Links. For killing 3 enemies on the battlefield, you will be rewarded with B-level ninjutsu 1, 60 taels of silver ticket. Seeing the root ninjas wearing masks get their own rewards, everyone is a little envious. This time is a sudden riches. Since Danzo carried out economic reforms, Konoha has been regarded as a complete local rich man. What's more, this raid on the enemy's logistics has made a lot of money. Under the leadership of this guy in Danzo, all the supplies that could be taken away were taken away, counted as the year-end dividends at the root, and the others were burned, but when they were brought back, a layer was cut off by the old fox. As for ninjutsu, it's even simpler. If there is a door, are you afraid that there are not enough ninjutsu? After all the root ninjas were in their hands, Tobarama looked up and glanced around, seeing the expressions on everyone's faces, and nodded inwardly. The reason why this reward meeting is held today is to give rewards to these really hard-working root ninjas, and the second is to. With a smile on his face, he straightened his back and shouted to the crowd. Everyone, seeing them get so many things, do you want to be like them? Think. Hearing Tobarama's words, the Konoha ninjas who couldn't bear it for a long time responded one after another, their eyes glowing blue. Then go and defeat the enemy. They are your treasures, your treasury. At this time, the eyes of the coalition ninjas looking into the distance have become symbols of money, and all the Konoha ninjas are gearing up. There is no way, they may not react when they hear these words, but the root ninjas in front have all got the rewards. As long as you take down those coalition ninjas, a lot of money will be yours. House, car, girl, little money. After so many days of continuous attacks on the enemy, the momentum of our own side has been mobilized by ourselves. Today is just the last stimulus, and we will strive to fight the coalition forces to pieces. Protracted war? You don't need a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Now that they know that all of them are people with ulterior motives, now is the time for them to attack. As long as the casualties on the opposite side reach a certain level, there is no need to continue fighting. In addition, the logistics department was so severely damaged by the roots, and it probably wouldn't last long in the face of so many ninjas. Now, all he needs to do is wait for work and defend the second line of defense. At that time, cast a big net and catch them all. In the evening, the coalition camp. Outside the camp, the howls of wounded ninjas appeared extremely miserable in the vast moonlight. Many ninjas are constantly running, but judging from their rough methods, the rescue effect on the wounded is almost negligible. The gauze was wrapped around the wound without disinfection, and the extremely rough herbs were placed randomly. After treating a patient, the doctor randomly wipes the medical equipment that continues to be used. All kinds of things that the teacher in Konoha Ninja School's medical class would definitely get angry after seeing them can be seen everywhere. From the disregarded expressions of the coalition ninjas, it can be seen that these things are already commonplace. After all, their ancestors have come here after being injured for generations. In the white tent in the center, the three shadows silently chewed the extremely delicious meat in their mouths, but the expressions on their faces were extremely indifferent, swallowing with difficulty, as if they were not chewing delicious food, but earth, stone and sawdust. Hearing their painful voices, Tu Ying couldn't help but throw down the food in his hands, glared at Lei Ying in front of him, and shouted. I think you have to explain to us why you couldn't even catch a small team of 100 people when we were on the front line blocking the Konoha army. Mizukage also slowly put down the food. This time he also wanted an explanation. At least he had to show his attitude, although they all knew in their hearts that the Tagama at the front line was just a clone, but the ninjas under him couldn't see it. It's rare for the man in the bandage to say the right thing this time. What's more, the casualties of the ninjas in the village who stayed in the camp this time were a bit heavy, more than the ninjas who died, fighting hard, on the front line, so he had to be knocked down anyway. HMPH, you guys know better than anyone else what happened, so I just need an explanation, why this guy from Senjubanjian ran over and rescued that damned Shimura Danzo. Lei Ying, who was already in an agitated mood, slapped the table directly, stood up, and confronted the two of them. His tone was tough, and he didn't back down at all. Chakra turned into lightning and kept beating on him. Seeing Ai's appearance, Gaidong Wanyue narrowed his eyes, ready to perform the hydration technique at any time. Wu put his hands on the handle of the knife, and the scene suddenly got out of control. The momentum of the three made the wine glasses on the table shake continuously, and the curtain was blown loudly. Just at the very moment, the curtain of the camp tent was lifted, and a Jonin walked in with his head down holding a folder, and Sankage turned his eyes to him at the same time. The moment he raised his head, the huge killing intent almost made him think that he was in hell. His feet went limp, and he slumped on the ground. Humph. Seeing that there was a step to go down, the three shadows looked at each other, snorted coldly, and turned their heads away at the same time. Now is not the time to fall out. The ninja who was paralyzed on the ground stood up tremblingly, regretting why he broke in at this time, and handed 3 copies of the same battle report to the three shadows, his tone trembling. Everyone, Lord Tukage, this is a new battle report. Seeing that it was a ninja from his own village, Wu waved his hand after receiving the battle report, signaling for him to leave. Even if it was just a competition of momentum, a cage-class collision was not something a Jonin could bear. After reading the battle report, Lei Ying read out a string of data recorded above in disbelief, and the excessive shock even made him feel that the world was a bit unreal. The percentage of Konoha ninjas who can be rescued after being injured is as high as %. This is absolutely impossible. Wuhei Gaidong Wanyue on the side even suspected that there were hidden moths in the spy department that had been cleaned once. Could it be the medical ninja created by Konoha before? Ghost Lantern Wanyue was the first to react, with a solemn tone. They didn't take this department seriously before, but now it seems that they are. Touching the bandages wrapped around his body, Wu was a little lost, hoping that the news was true, even if it was absolutely bad news for the coalition forces. I directly got up and searched for information about medical ninjas. If this was true, then their winning rate against Konoha would be reduced to negligible. Whether it is physically or mentally, it is a huge blow to the coalition ninja. Finally, a dossier was found in a corner. The time recorded above is impressively several years ago, and this time is enough to cultivate the system into shape. This time we may be a little stumped, but it also means that our generation is definitely the most likely opportunity to fight against Konoha. Who knows what will happen to them if they are given another 20 years. It is only 20 years since the Warring States period was settled, and Konoha has been able to develop to this point without relying on the dead god. Every second in the past is the time for each village to distance itself from Konoha. With such terrifying potential, if they are given another 20 years, even if a pig comes to power in the future, they can easily hit 4, right? This is the case in Senjujuma. The same is true for Thousand Hands. The third generation of Hokage will definitely widen this gap again. A haze covered everyone's hearts, and it lasted for a long time. A dozen or so black shadows lurk in a big tree outside a small mountain village. Their sophisticated equipment shows that they are definitely not grassroots bandits. Kuroto-kun, are we sure we want to do this? A rough ninja with a scar on his face looked at the brightly lit village with greedy eyes, and unconsciously rubbed his fingers on the handle of the knife. Hearing what a young ninja said behind him, he walked up to him with a smile, and looked at him quietly without speaking for a while. Seeing the smile on his face, the young man not only didn't relax in the slightest, but took a breath and tried to maintain his composure. Suddenly, the scar ninja raised his foot and kicked the young man's abdomen. He flew out all of a sudden, hit the tree trunk hard on his back, and fell directly to the ground. Before he could get up in time, he came to the young ninja, slowly put his feet on his back that had just been hit, and said with a sneer. Hee. I really don't know where you got the courage to stand in front of labor and management. You must know that you are not standing in front of labor and management, you are blocking the way for brothers to get rich. As soon as these words came out, several figures beside the young ninja who wanted to step forward stopped in their tracks, and the pity in their eyes disappeared. A ninja who was obviously familiar with the young man walked forward with a smile, helped him up, and attached his ears. They are nothing more than pariahs from the Nation of Fire. It has nothing to do with us. They haven't apologized to Mr. Haitang. After finishing speaking, he looked at Scar Ninja again, with a flattering face, took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, and handed it to him. Sorry, Kuroto-kun, this guy is doing this kind of thing for the first time, and he is not familiar with it yet. Feeling the pain in his chest, the young ninja coughed a few times, broke away from his support, walked to a big tree and sat down alone. Seeing this, the friend wanted to persuade him again, but the Scar Ninja blocked it with his hand, and looked at the young man who was not able to get in, and sneered disdainfully. HMPH, you don't know how to compliment, this hunting is not for you. After throwing down these words, he picked up the weapon beside him and walked towards the small mountain village with big strides. The rest of the ninjas also followed without even looking at the young man. After everyone left, the young friend came to his side and squatted down. The young man raised his head, looked at him, and said excitedly. I didn't know that the hunting you said was swinging a butcher's knife at unarmed civilians. Mr. Qingtian. They are just people from the land of fire. Besides, this world is ruled by the jungle. That's why you rack your brains to get in with those family ninjas? Don't you forget that we are also civilians? Hearing this sentence, he froze for a moment, then said in a flat tone. No, we are already ninjas, and have nothing to do with civilians. You'd better think about it. The friend who had spoken before shook his head, and also took up his weapon and walked towards the village. The young man watched him catch up with the group of people who had been reduced to beasts. He raised his arms and lowered them. He didn't know whether his thoughts were correct or not. He lowered his head silently, thinking. Why do commoner ninjas in Konoha get the respect they deserve, while our village just treats us as cannon fodder? Is this why you are desperately trying to integrate into the ninja circle of your family? He raised his head and looked at the blue sky, with fallen leaves floating on his forehead. His eyes turned from confusion to firmness. No, this world is definitely not like this. Slowly stretching his hand into his bosom, he took out a book with a red cover, and eagerly flipped through it. If the coalition ninjas who left just now saw this book, they would definitely turn pale with shock. This is a book that was jointly banned by the daimyo of the 5 major countries. They didn't know what was written on it, they just heard about it, and it described a world without big names, oppression, and wars. Everyone can live and work in peace and contentment, and everyone is full of hope. And they just want to laugh out loud. How could such a world exist? It's just a fantasy book. I don't know why the daimyos are so nervous. They burn every book they see, and even kill the holder. The wind blows the pages of the book, and the 2 big characters in gold are shining brightly in the sun. Spark, author. Tibetan mission, young people should get out of the air conditioning and just go up. The screams in the distance echoed with the sound of pages being turned, and a fishy wind blew to the young man's side, awakening him and also strengthening his heart. Absolutely cannot let this world go on like this. Perhaps, I can plant a seed and become the real spark. Mr. Tibetan Tuan, Please protect this flame. If you want to change the situation in the village, it is absolutely impossible to rely on yourself. You must unite with the ninjas in the village who dare to speak out for the common people, and light this prairie fire together. Frontier battlefield. The dust spread on the ground was swirled into the sky by the wind. The weather was so hot that every ninja present was dripping with sweat. After the sun came out, the sky seemed to be on fire. Strangely enough, even though it was only March, the air was very stuffy. On both sides of the battlefield, there are two distinct groups of people. One side is strictly disciplined, like a silent iron tower, and the other side is noisy. They are obviously companions, but they are faintly divided into three factions. They cooperate with each other and guard against each other. As the commander-in-chief of Konoha, Danzo naturally stood in front of a group of Konoha ninjas, facing the three shadows on the opposite side. Lei Ying looked at Ying beside him, his muscles bulged, he took a step forward, and said with a cold snort. Shimura Danzo, I have more than 10,000 ninjas, men with swords, and countless soldiers who control strings. What do you use to fight me? Are you good at fighting? Danzo, with a lollipop in his mouth, looked arrogant. Come out to hang out now, it's about power. Konoha ninjas took a step together, and the sand and gravel on the ground shook. Such cohesion made the expressions of the coalition ninjas change drastically. It's about the background. Thousands of hands appeared behind him holding the sword of Thor. Uzumaki Mito's countless golden chains flew. Uchiha Sanming's eyes were scarlet. The kaleidoscope Sharingan brought overwhelming oppression, and a wooden coffin rose from the ground with a first character written on it. Sannying couldn't help but took half a step back. His eyes were solemn, not to mention Senjupan. Just the word, beginning, made their legs tremble uncontrollably. At the same time, he couldn't help but curse in his heart. It was agreed that the two armies will fight, so fuck off. What's the difference between this and the eagle sauce who doesn't talk about martial arts? Which path are you on? Seeing that the 10,000 coalition ninjas did not dare to respond, Danzo gave them a disdainful glance, pointed at Sankage, and counted them one by one. Oh, 1, 2, 3, so it's a little bastard. Damn it, you're too deceitful. The violent ghost lantern Wanyue pulled out his ninja knife, and was about to step forward, but was held back by Raikage beside him. What do you mean? Following Ai's gaze, Senju made a seal in his hand, tilted his head, and raised the corners of his mouth. Seeing them looking over, he raised his eyebrows and smiled politely, and the wooden coffin shook accordingly. Wu Ji felt a sense of powerlessness, looked at the extremely arrogant Danzo on the opposite side, gritted his teeth, put his hands on the two samurai swords behind his back, and said coldly. If you have the ability, let's single out. Oh, how can you kill a cow with a chicken knife? Besides, I'm still a child. Just tell my teacher and uncle what you said, right, Uncle Zujian. After speaking, he patted the wooden coffin beside him. After hearing Danzo's address, Sankage's heart fell to the bottom. Now he can be sure that the guy in the coffin is Senju Hashirama. This feeling of aggrieved makes Sankage clench his fists tightly, but he is helpless. Raikage hammered the ground and waved his big hand, and the Cloud ninjas rushed forward with weapons in their hands. The remaining two ninjas from Ninja Village waited until their respective cages nodded before charging. Looking at this scene, Lei Ying felt a little hazy in his heart. Although he was elected as the commander-in-chief of the coalition forces, he couldn't command the ninjas in the remaining two villages at all. Facing the influx of coalition ninjas, Danzo didn't panic at all. Although there are many of them, they are not organized. No matter how many people there are, they are just large and single fighters. When the coalition ninjas reached the ninjutsu attack range, they sneered and waved their hands. The whole army seemed to be one, and under Danzo's hands, they were like fingers. The whole army is attacking. The 1st Brigade. Wind escape ninjutsu, fire escape ninjutsu, let go. The dense ninjutsu was released from the hands of the ninjas, and the two kinds of ninjutsu with different attributes complemented each other without causing any unnecessary consumption. The Black Shadow Ninja holds a samurai sword and sticks to the front line to protect the ninja who releases ninjutsu behind him. In this case, the battlefield seems to be a one-sided massacre. There are not a few coalition ninjas who have turned into corpses when they are not close to the Konoha ninjas. They want to use ninjutsu to counterattack, but how can the scattered ninjutsu compare to the established ninjutsu army? Damn it. Where do you three want to go? Looking at the battle situation, Sannying couldn't sit still anymore. Their side was completely at a disadvantage. Just when they were about to move, Senju Tobarama appeared in front of them with a wooden coffin and stopped them. In desperation, they could only silently watch the development of the war. On a big tree at the edge of the battlefield, Uchiha Madara appeared with Hei and by Z. Looking at the familiar word, he narrowed his eyes. Hei raised his head, looked at Uchiha Madara, and asked curiously. Madara-sama, is it really Senju Bashirama in there? After being silent for a while, Uchiha Madara shook his head and sneered. He is really a cunning little guy. He understands that on the frontal battlefield, the combined power of the three shadows is definitely greater than that bastard Senju Tobiramama, and he has to bypass Senju Tobiramama's heart knot. Hashirama's corpse cannot move, so he came up with such an empty plan. High, it was really high. Even though it made Tobirama unable to move, Sanning didn't dare to move. Looking at Danzo Shimura on the battlefield, Uchiha Madara was not stingy with praise, but his eyes became colder. Having such a cunning enemy will definitely be a major obstacle to his Moon Eye plan in the future. Then shall we? Highway heard Uchiha Madara's meaning, and felt ruthless in his heart. There must be no mistakes in the Moon Eye plan, so he made a gesture of wiping his throat. The implementation process of the plan is too boring and not good, ha 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 ha, after all, I am Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara turned his head to look at Hei, shook his head, his kaleidoscope Sharingans kept spinning, there were some changes, and his tone was extremely proud. When I turned around, I took a look at Danzo. I hope you can add some fun to me, Shimura Danzo, otherwise, it would be too boring. Susanoo. The giant purple skeleton stands on the battlefield, slashing down with the sword in his hand, causing a burst of landslides, and the ninjas of the coalition forces all use ninjutsu, but they can't do anything to Uchiha Sanming under the protection of Susan. Uchiha Sanming, who opened the kaleidoscope Sharingan, has long hair fluttering, and the whole person looks extremely cold and arrogant, with a faint demeanor of Uchiha Madara. My Uchiha clan is the No clan of Konoha, clan people, for the glory of Uchiha. The blood of the Uchiha tribe behind them was boiling, following their patriarch. Their scarlet eyes looked like ghosts crawling out of hell, like killing machines. Ordinary ninjas met them. It was like butter meeting a hot pot, and it melted clean all at once. HMPH, you can't let the mere Uchiha be the best. Clan people, follow me. Soft fist method Bagua 64 palms. The patriarch Hyuga looked at the Uchiha clan who were slaughtering all directions with his eyes open, sneered, and stared at the enemy in front of him. A huge gossip map appeared under his feet, including more than a dozen coalition ninjas. The figures shuttled among them, and the enemy had no power to fight back. Oh. Headed by each clan member, Hyuga Ninja formed several fighting squads, with tacit cooperation, like a sharp knife, ruthlessly piercing into the enemy. Damn Konoha ninjas, stop! Seeing the retreating coalition ninjas, Ginkaku Kinkaku couldn't sit still, roared, and jumped into the battle. The nine-tailed chakra emerged from the body, gathered into a tailed beast coat, and the 6 tails emerged behind the 2 of them. With one punch and one kick, they already had the strength of the shadow class, and rushed to the battlefield. Looking at the Konoha ninja with beast-like eyes, he smiled cruelly, opened his mouth wide, and 2 small-tailed beast jades formed at a very high speed. Boom! Tailed beast jade exuded a breath of death, cut through the air, and rushed towards the place where Konoha ninjas gathered with the sound of wind. The Konoha ninja at the center of the attack stared wide-eyed at the attacking tailed beast jade, but his body could not move. The mountainous killing intent suppressed them, making them unable to move. King Kong blockade. Several golden chains emerged from behind them, firmly locking the tailed beast jade and wrapping it tightly. No matter how violent it was, it could not escape the control of the chains. Leave them to the old man. Uzumaki Mito and Uzumaki Ashina took a step forward. Their turbid eyes flashed brightly. Their old bodies exuded a monstrous aura that was out of their age, and the golden chains flying all over the sky behind them gave Konoha Ninja a great sense of security. 2 old things, don't come out to make a fuss when you are so old, lest you die here. Golden Horn and Silver Horn looked at the 2 top ninjas in sealing techniques. Their mouths were constantly provocative, but their eyes were unusually dignified. They were not easy to deal with. Even if Uzumaki Mito couldn't release Kyuubi due to his old body, he was still a real cage-level powerhouse. After all, she is the woman who abruptly took Hashirama from Uchiha Madara. So scary. Oh, they're just 2 little foxes, not even 9 tails. Uzumaki Mito and Uzumaki Ashina quickly moved forward, fighting with them, entangled them tightly, and prevented their tailed beast Jade from interfering with the battle. The Senju clan mixed among the ordinary ninjas and shared the combat pressure for most of the Konoha ninjas. Although they did not inherit the Mudden, their huge vitality and chakra were the sharp weapons for the Senju ninjas to rival the Uchiha. Earth Dungeon Gangly style art. Konoha has a lot of high-level combat power. A rock giant rose from the ground, and with a single punch, several black shadow ninjas disappeared into black smoke. Onogi floated on its head, watching Konoha's attacking momentum, frowning tightly, and making seals with both hands, manipulating the giant to face Susanoo Uchiha Sanming. This kind of giant enemy has a great impact on the morale of one's own side. The art of turning the heart, shadow mimicry, the technique of doubling. The Konoha Ace troops' combined pig-deer butterfly attack technique is unrivaled on the battlefield. With the combined efforts of the three elite jonin, it can already rival the cage-level powerhouse, and ordinary ninjas cannot resist it at all. Cough. Leave them to us. Let them be the first battle of our 7 ninja swordsmen. 7 figures dressed in black robes stood up, took off their robes, and held 7 ninja swords of different shapes in their hands. Their young faces were full of arrogance. Looking at Konoha's veteran Inoka butterfly troops, they grinned, their figures flashed, and they left the place immediately, and the knife tip slashed at them. Not bad sword skills, but compared to that pervert Shimura Danzo, it's still a lot worse. Although Ikabuta of this generation was caught off guard by the strangely functioning Nanin sword for a while, but relying on the long-term experience of being beaten, by Danzo, he can survive. Then, it's just you. Danzo slowly raised the black knife, the tip of the knife flashed a cold light, and pointed at the third-generation eye from a distance. The corners of his mouth curled up, his eyes looked at the second-generation eye, and he smiled triumphantly, completely ignoring his angry eyes. Can't beat you. Can't beat your son? If there is a choice, I really don't want to fight with you. Thunder Chakra Mode. Looking at the remaining high-level combat power around, Sandai sighed. He really didn't want to fight this famous pervert. He was the guy who could fight his father, but now he was the only one left who could fight Danzo. Reluctantly stood up, the Thunderton Chakra suddenly popped out of his body, lowered his body, and rushed towards Danzo like a rocket. The slightly younger third-generation eye already had the demeanor of his father. Good come. Beginning to solve stroke and cut. Danzo's eyes locked tightly on the attacking 3 generations eye, squatted down, and instantly drew out his knife. Violent flames burst out instantly, the sword energy and flames mixed together, and cut towards 3 generations eye. The forced 3rd generation eye could only stop and gather chakra to block the knife. Not bad, won the essence of your father. To shut up. Danzo, who kept waving his knife, took the time to mock the 3rd generation of eye, looking like an elder. The 3rd generation of eye just wanted to tear the mouth of the cheap man in front of him, and at the same time, his moves became more and more frenzied. This battle is still a battle between flames and thunder. It's just different from last time. This time, the orange flame completely suppressed the violent thunder and lightning, and played with it in the palm of his hand. Spiritualism. White smoke drifted past, and a huge toad rose up from the ground, with a pipe in its mouth and a short knife on its waist, unruly. Looking at the densely packed enemies in front of it, its eyes squinted, and its eyes were extremely dignified. It's just that compared with the body that can rival the tailed beast in the future, it looks much thinner, but it is still a giant. Spot Red arm slowly placed on the handle of the knife, took a deep breath, exhaled smoke, and said slowly. Jiraiya, you guy, I didn't expect to face such a difficult enemy for the first time after making a contract with you. What? Wentai, are you afraid? Leia turned over and jumped onto Toad Wentai's head, crossing his arms. He was unexpectedly reliable at this time, who was usually joking. I don't have the word fear in my dictionary. Wentai snorted coldly, pulled out his dagger, and swung it forward fiercely. In a short time, several enemy ninjas lost their members. I didn't expect that Zillai would have such an opportunity. Dashimaru stretched out his arms, and several poisonous snakes came out of his sleeves in an instant, biting the enemy who was waving kunai at him in front of him. Tsunade, who smashed the enemy away with a punch, wiped the sweat from his forehead and rolled his eyes. Don't you have it too? The teacher didn't give it to me. Miss, the slug psychic of the Senju family was found by the 1st generation for you. HMPH, Longdi Cave is also one of the 3 holy places. After hearing this, Orochimaru smiled awkwardly, and looked at the figure dancing with the flame and thunder in front of the crowd. His eyes flashed. Such a teacher is worth his life to follow. Danzo is not just as simple as helping him find a psychic beast. When Wan's snake came out of psychic for the first time, seeing that he was weak, he even wanted to recognize it as the master, and enshrine 10 humans to it every month, otherwise he would eat himself. Then there is no more. When Orochimaru told Danzo about this, he took the 2nd generation of Hokage to go directly to Ryuchi Cave. The specific situation is not clear, but the teacher and the others came back with a huge tale. Not to mention, the snake soup cooked is quite delicious, but Juan's snake has been injured for 3 months, so he can't eat it often. Damn Konoha brats, are you Konoha's geniuses? Uncle, we like to kill geniuses who haven't grown up, ha ha ha. A group of coalition ninjas who had just escaped from Toadbunta held kunai, slowly approached Orochimaru and Tsunade, licked their lips, and smiled cruelly. Facing a group of coalition ninjas who were staring at the front, Orochimaru smiled gently, and said coldly. Let the teacher see the results of our hard work. Spiritualism 2. Majestic white smoke rose, and 2 huge figures loomed in the smoke. Looking at the towering psychic beast, a coalition ninja swallowed, his legs trembling. Zinima, are Konoha little ghosts all monsters? 10,000 snakes rushed out of the smoke, the huge python head scanned the field, the scarlet eyes were extremely ferocious, and looked down at Orochimaru with a condescending expression, but the meat of the snake tail was a little different from other places, it was too immature. Oshimaru, I want 10. Suddenly, Danzo, who was teasing the 3rd generation of Ai in front of him, turned his head and looked back, grinning, with 8 big white teeth neatly arranged. She even saw his throat move, and looked at him like he looked at human beings. Orochimaru looked at Wansha who was swaying all over his body and smiled, followed Danzo to show his 8 big white teeth, and said gently. What's matter? No, absolutely not. Little Master Orochimaru, I have something to tell you. With a chuckle, Orochimaru looked at a large group of coalition ninjas ahead, and said softly. Then, let's go together. After finishing speaking, he turned over and jumped on the head of 10,000 snakes, and rushed towards the enemy, while Tsunade manipulated the slugs to continuously treat the injured Konoha ninjas on the battlefield. With the addition of Jiraiya, the 3 psychic beasts, they already have the initial sharpness of the Sannin in the future, no less than the strength of the Jonin, enough to fight in the shadowless battlefield. Ha ha ha, happy, you are the only one with a knife? Mifune cut off the ninja sword of the enemy in front of him with one sword, and fixed his eyes on him. The aura of his body merged with the sword in his hand, showing his sharpness. Why is the strength of a warrior so outrageous? Doesn't it mean that it is already an antique? Crowds of coalition ninjas surrounded Sanfuin, but they couldn't even hold the knife in their hands, trembling, feeling extremely bitter in their hearts. Originally, they saw a samurai, soft persimmon, appearing on the ninja battlefield, but they didn't expect that there was a copper pea hidden in it, which broke their teeth. Looking around, a dozen or so people surrounded him, seemingly aggressive, but they didn't dare to step forward. Mifune laughed wildly and said word by word. No matter how many sheep there are, they are still sheep, live to die. The knife in his hand turned over, the cold light shone, and he rushed straight with the knife, as if 10 people were surrounded by one. Danzo's disciples are all dragons and phoenixes among men. Sarutobi Hiruzen, who couldn't get into the high-level duel, could only wield the Rui golden cudgel to wipe out the enemies in front of him. Looking at the demeanor of Jiraiya and others, he involuntarily praised him, then smiled confidently, and looked at his 3 disciples. Hyakujiran is the worst, but he can also fight back and forth with Chunin, while Hitaki Sakumo and Matt Dana are not ordinary. The former has a white-toothed short knife, which makes the enemy terrified, basically unstoppable, and has a bit of Danzo's sword skills. The latter's physical skills are vigorous, which is exactly the same as the way Danzo beat him before. Originally, the taijutsu of opening and closing was taught by Danzo. He was a scumbag, a thief, and specialized in the 3rd way of others. He used all kinds of eyes, stepping on his toes, and wailing everywhere he passed. As for what will happen after learning from Danzo, Sarutobi Hiruzen just wanted to smile. This was handpicked by his disciple, Lord Hokage. The stronger they are, the better. Only then will he have more say in the village. The master-student relationship cannot be changed. After thinking about it, he looked at the 3 disciples with more kind eyes, and he casually beat a coalition ninja who wanted to sneak attack, and smiled triumphantly. Danzo, I may not be able to win you for the position of the 3rd Hokage, but for the position of the 4th Hokage, you have to give it a try. I can't, but my disciple can. Fighting on the battlefield is even worse. More and more people fell down, mixed with blood and mud, mixed together on this land. There were Konohas, and there were coalition ninjas. There is almost no one on the current battlefield who can calmly watch the situation. There are swords everywhere, killings everywhere, and the clouds in the sky roll up and down, and they are dense, just like the dark crowd on the ground. The more ninjas he saw fell, the more impatient Sankage became, especially Tsuchikage, whose body was tense and ready to jump out at any time. Judging from the current situation, the original Konoha annexation plan should be bankrupt. If the fight continues, the most likely result is that Konoha and the three major ninja villages will damage a large number of ninjas at the same time, and there will be no one in strength. Sankage clearly understood that it would be a great loss if there were too many ninjas killed or injured here. In the current ninja world, apart from their pair of Snipe and Clam, there is Sand Ninja, a guy who has always preserved his strength. And the nearest two big countries to Sand Ninja Village, apart from Konoha, are Iwa Ninja. Even if this guy Konoha suffered heavy losses in this battle, he would still be a skinny camel that is bigger than a horse, and the death of a tiger is still there. Compared with the two, Sand Ninja's first choice must be the dilapidated Iwanin. I saw a lot of Iwanin who had already died, and the victory that was close at hand was abruptly blocked by the man in front of him. His anger made him a little dizzy. Tsuchikage took a step forward, and said in a serious tone, "Thousand Hands, are you going to stop us? What are you talking about? Are you out of your mind?" Thousand Hands silently pulled out the sword of Thunder God, facing the menacing Tu Ying. He did not back down, and grinned. "You dare to plunder the land of my country of fire, and you still want me not to stop you? Let labor and management just leave it here. Whoever dares to stretch out his claws, my elder brother will kick open the coffin board and chop off whose claws." Against the backdrop of the coffin behind him, the aura of his whole body appeared extremely strong. What about the old and the young? Lei Ying looked at Danzo, who was teasing his stupid child on the battlefield, and then looked at Senju Tobirama with a rogue face, feeling extremely aggrieved. Is he a villain in Lei Ying village? The two consecutive generations of Raikage have been crushed by the two generations of Hokage, and it seems that the next generation of Raikage does not have much hope of being able to beat that Danzo. Are the three generations of Raikage all trash? No, absolutely not. The first generation of Raikage, who created Yunan village single-handedly, forcibly created a piece of fertile soil in that withered land, and hid the fierce blade in his heart. The second generation of Raikage, created ninjutsu and inherited the ambition of the previous generation. During his reign, he followed the ninja school system, and the strength of Cloud Ninja was greatly improved. And his own son, the future three generations of Raikage, already possessed Kage-level strength at a young age, and his strategy was enough to be the shadow of a village and the proper master of ZTE. There are three generations like this, but they are still no match for that damned Konoha. Is that because the Cloud Ninjas are not working hard enough? The same is not true. Every Cloud Ninja loves his village very much and advocates strength. Even the most disobedient Ginkaku Kinkaku under him can't say that they don't love the village, but their methods are too fierce and extreme, and they don't care about the situation in the ninja world. You can only be a knife, not a knife holder. It is such a village, but it is still huddled in a small place and cannot advance an inch. The battle before him was a battle that Sanying had bet on the vitality of the village for the next 20 years. He couldn't afford to lose. The war is becoming more and more fierce. Whether it is Konoha or the coalition forces, both sides have become red hot. Sankage watched anxiously. Although Konoha's side was also fighting in a melee, there was still a certain organizational structure, while the coalition army was in complete chaos. The three forces couldn't coordinate perfectly at all. Until now, they were fighting on their own. According to the current situation, if you continue to fight, you will definitely be at a disadvantage. This guy is completely confident. Suddenly, Raikage squinted his eyes, stared at Senju Tobirama's eyes, and said slowly, "Tokaima, the original Hokage-sama wasn't in there, right?" "That's right. If the first generation Hokage-sama was really inside, he would have come out to top the Buddha." Tsukage, who was already extremely anxious in his heart, touched the twin swords on his back and said immediately. Gaidong Wanyue licked his lips. He almost couldn't help the desire to do it. They are both Kage level. Even if Senju Tobirama is strong, they can't stop them all, and Kage level can control the situation of the battle. As long as one of them can join the battlefield, the slight advantage that Konoha has worked so hard to gain will disappear in an instant. Hearing their pressing questions, Tobirama felt a little bit of a shock in his heart. It would be bad if he couldn't frighten them, and he must not show timidity at this time. Senju's face remained unchanged. He snorted coldly, showing no sign of weakness. "HMPH, is it right? You guys can come and try it out." The handprints were flying, and in a blink of an eye, the last seal of the reincarnation of the dirty soil was pinched, and he could do it at any time. Facing such a confident Tobirama, Lei Ying began to doubt his own judgment again. His eyes were erratic, and he looked at the first-generation coffin with apprehension. At this time, A blood-soaked Union Shangren knelt in front of Lakage, lowered his head and said, "Master Rakage, more than half of the first unit of Yunin has been killed or injured. Do you want to withdraw and replace them with the second unit?" Hearing this, Rakage was startled. The first unit had assembled most of Yunnin's strength, it was the absolute main force, and it had lost so many people so quickly. And the surrounding Tukage and Mizukage were also reported by Junin. They were all sent down to command the battle situation. Looking at their expressions, the balance of victory was not tilted to their side. The three with ugly faces got together again and walked back to the command post camp. In the silence, Tsuchikage spoke first. "My Iwanin's troops have already suffered heavy losses, and if the fight continues, I will not accompany them." As a battle madman, Gaidong Wanyue couldn't accept it, walked up to Tu Ying, grabbed his collar, and said with wide eyes, "It's just a Konoha. We can't hold it anymore, and they certainly can't hold it. Now say this kind of thing." Rakage sighed, shook his head watching the cloud ninjas who were still fighting on the battlefield, and said in a heavy tone, "Tugage is right. We can't fight like this anymore, we have to leave fire for the next generation of the village." "Why do you even say that to Lei Ying? Have you forgotten the blood oath you made before the expedition?" "That's it, it's impolite to continue. I still want to thank you, Shui Ying." Lei Ying patted him on the shoulder, lowered his head, but there was nothing he could do. Gaidong Wanyue looked at the two of them, gritted his teeth. Although he liked to fight, he was also the shadow of a village. After discussing with Master Yuan, he understood that the terrain of the village was both protection and imprisonment. If Mist Ninja wants to really grow stronger, it must occupy a place on the mainland. That's why he desperately sent troops together, not hesitating to offend the two nearest neighbors, the nation of Vortex and the nation of Fire, and also attack Konoha. Tu Ying beside him was already impatient with waiting, looking down at the ghost lantern in the moon with a condescending tone. "HMPH, little dwarf, do you think Iwanin, are the same as your Mistnin? We don't live on an isolated island, and there's a desert jackal watching over us." After saying that, he waved his clothes and said to Iwagaku Onbi Jonin, who was staying aside, "Notice, the second reserve unit will go up to cover the retreat, and the rear team of the first unit will become the front team, and withdraw in an orderly manner." "Yes." After receiving this order, the eyes of the head of Yan Nin's dark army lit up, and he disappeared in place with a blink. Lei Ying also ordered to go down, and the remaining reserve troops of the two major shadow villages all went up, as a guarantee to avoid being too closely chased by Konoha during the retreat. "You guys, damn it." Mizukage stared at the two angrily, then waved his hand helplessly, telling the rest of them to withdraw. It would be a joke to rely on his own strength to fight against Konoha. In the battlefield. "What? You said let us retreat." Golden Horn and Silver Horn forced the Uzumaki people back, and shouted loudly while holding the Jonin who was sending the message in one hand. The red chakra exuding from his body constantly emanated an irritable and evil aura, which made Jonin tremble all over. The two in front of him had a history of manslaughtering a ninja from the same village. Seeing that Kinkaku became more and more violent, he said quickly, "This is what Master Lei Ying ordered." After hearing this, Ginkaku calmed down a little, kicked him away, and locked his eyes on the coalition command post. "Come on. Let's find out why this old bidden wants to withdraw all his brothers." Ginkaku looked around and saw many Yunin looking at this side. He turned his eyes and shouted loudly, "So many brothers died to get this piece of land. You can't just withdraw as soon as you say it. This belongs to our coalition forces." Sure enough, many ninjas nearby were immediately incited, and the crowd became angry. Ginkaku and Kinkaku looked at each other, nodded, and rushed to the command post together. "My lords, Golden Horn and Silver Horn, you cannot go in." Insanity. What? Bang bang bang. Several ninjas in charge of guarding the gate drew an arc in the air and flew in, lying on the ground clutching their chests, rubbing them constantly. As soon as the door curtain was lifted, Golden Horn and Silver Horn came in with a tailed beast chakra, fixedly looking at Lei Ying. His eyes were like a wild beast out of the cage, ready to kill people at any time. "Lei Ying, your method of training your subordinates is really good. Ha ha ha. There is art in manipulating people." Mizukage and Tukage looked at the two people who were at war, and they laughed at Rakage at the same time. Being forced into such a situation by his subordinates, he can be regarded as number one. "Shut up." Lei Ying looked at the two eating melons next to him with an unfriendly look. It was a shame that these two guys were so disrespectful to themselves. They stood up slowly and pressed down on Jinzhao and Yinzhao. "I'm Lei Ying. I don't need to explain to you how to act. Do you want me to sit in this seat for you?" His tone was as flat as water, and he couldn't hear any emotion, but the two veterans under him, Ginkaku and Kinkaku, naturally heard the anger contained in Lei Ying's words. The aura of his body was reduced to 3 points, cold sweat broke out on his back, the resentment disappeared completely, and the tailed beast chakra was also taken back into his body. Now the two brothers can't beat this Lei Ying, at least they have to get the Six Paths magical artifact before they dare to really turn against him. Don't dare, it's just that some of the brothers below don't understand this order. Okay. Yes, I understand. He bowed his head and retreated, not daring to say another word, but the madness in his eyes made people shudder. Seeing that the three of them didn't start a fight, Mizukage and Tukage helplessly put down the melon seeds in their hands, and said with smiles on their faces. Ha ha ha, the Thunder Shadow Sword is not old yet. Just because the two brothers still want to interfere with my order, it's a little tender. Lei Ying, who was slowly sitting on the chair, glanced at the curtain with disdain, stretched his claws like an old lion, and said lightly. Ginkaku Kinkaku outside the curtain heard their conversation, laughed silently, and also looked at the curtain, full of ambition. Since Reikage-sama doesn't have the guts he had when he was young, then my brother and I should take care of it. The old male lion and the ambitious young lion face each other through a thin curtain. Brothers, kill me. The retreating coalition ninjas aroused the morale of the Konoha ninjas even more. They spontaneously killed through the enemy's rear troops several times and bit them hard behind them, making it impossible for the coalition ninjas to retreat in an orderly manner, like a piece of loose sand, unable to gather at all. Danzo-sama, let's take advantage of the victory and pursue it. I, Uchiha, would like to be the vanguard. Uchiha Sanming, who untied Susanoo, wiped the blood from his eyes, and immediately ran to Danzo, saying with a fighting spirit. It can be said that the Uchiha clan showed their best demeanor in this battle. They are worthy of the name of the fighting clan. No less than 1,000 coalition ninjas were killed or injured in their hands. Although many clansmen died here, most of them were Uchiha who successfully opened their eyes. For him, the patriarch, he definitely earned it. Supporting war with war is the best way for the Uchiha clan to become stronger. Danzo squinted his eyes, looked at the Uchiha Sanming who invited the battle, and felt a little shocked. After this battle, the number of Uchiha's clansmen who opened their eyes was no less than 3 digits, and even a few people opened the Sanguyu Sharingan. The Uchiha who turned on the Sanguyu is the elite of Jonin. That is to say, Uchiha has added several elite Junin, and in terms of Junin level combat power alone, he has become the number 1 among all the families. It is an enviable talent, but it is also dreadful. If Konoha is a vine, then Uchiha is the thorns growing on it, which can hurt people as well as themselves. No wonder Sarutobi Hiruzen will follow the teacher's policy in the future, imprisoning this family in the village and suppressing their fighting talent. After all, the non-heroic master dare not use this knife. Senju Bazama dares, Senju Paijin dares, Namikaze Minato dares, Sarutobi Hirozada does not. He didn't dare, he dared. Uchiha Sanming, who was kneeling on the ground, raised his head slightly and looked at Danzo, but seeing his meaningful eyes, he quickly lowered his head. The master in front of him is not easy to be fooled, his heart is like a deep ocean, his plans are like an ocean, and there are countless plots and tricks in his mind. If he misses it, the entire Uchiha will never be able to live in peace. Seeing the respectful Uchiha patriarch, Danzo chuckled, turned to the coalition ninjas who were constantly fleeing all over the mountains and plains, and nodded. It's really frightening like a bereaved dog. Give orders, the wounded will retreat, and the 3 ordinary ninjas will form a 9-man squadron to avoid casualties. Let the Hyuga clan come with you, and follow them with ordinary ninjas, but don't chase them too closely. You know, rabbits will bite people when they are in a hurry. Clear. Hearing Danzo's words, Uchiha Sanming sighed in his heart. It seemed that this credit could not be taken by himself, but he didn't show half of it on his face, bowed his head respectfully, and backed out. Konoha Ninja, who received the unified deployment order, broke through the blockade of the 2nd Coalition Ninja unit with an even more unstoppable posture. These damn Konoha ninjas. The 3rd generation I who was lying on the stretcher stood up with his arms propped up, and looked at the Konoha ninjas who were chasing after the main force. The 2nd army seemed to be completely wiped out. With monstrous hatred in his eyes, he gritted his teeth and said. Seeing this, Yun Shinobi, who was in charge of guarding him, quickly pressed it down. Young master, you can lie down in peace, the wound on your body is not healed yet. Sandai looked down and saw that his chest, which was wrapped in thick gauze, was bleeding because of his getting up. The man's knife skills flashed in his mind, and he was filled with fear that could not be shaken off. He had never seen such a fast sword before, and the armor of thunder and lightning that he was proud of looked so fragile under his sword, and everything the blade pointed at was indestructible, and while fighting with him, he still had time to lay out the battlefield. This kind of aggrieved feeling only appeared when he was fighting with his father. This is a kind of absolute suppression in strength. But Hell Spike couldn't attack Danzo at all. He seemed to be able to predict the direction of his attack in advance, and every time he dodged with a distance of an inch. The first time or two he thought it was just luck. But he didn't expect that he could dodge every time. He missed by a tiny bit, and he missed by thousands of miles. All his attacks hit the air. It was just teasing himself. The knife on the chest, to put it mildly, was a medal for the battle, but it was better to say that he gave himself a knife when he got tired of playing, and crippled his fighting power. After all, in his own capacity, if he really died at the hands of Danzo, the second generation of Raikage would definitely go crazy, and he would no longer care about the unwarranted first generation of Hokage. Young master, Konoha ninjas are following up again. A cloud ninja with blood on his body ran to the third generation of Ai, knelt down and said. Sure enough, it's his handwriting. What a shame. Third Eye opened his tired eyes again. This Konoha ninja was simply candy, and he couldn't shake it off. Feeling ruthless in his heart, he said to Yun Nin, who came to report, set up a death squad, cut off the heirs for the large army, and tell them that after you die, I will support your wife by myself, so don't worry about it. After receiving the order, Yun Nin's heart shuddered, and he lowered his head in response. Soon, 100 cloud ninjas came out, broke away from the main force, and faced the Konoha ninja head-on with the will to die. They are all warriors of my cloud ninja. Looking at the backs of these people, Midai sighed, then turned his head and kept urging. Don't retreat quickly. What if you are chased by Konoha's people? After leaving corpses all over the place, the coalition ninjas were finally able to rest for a while. Looking at the border in front of them, their faces were full of rejoicing. Crossing the national border is truly safe. With the assistance of ninjas stationed at the border, at least my life is guaranteed. He quickly lifted the stone tablet between the two countries and hid behind it. Don't say it is unpredictable. This short sentence was kicked down by them a year ago, but now it has become their own amulet. What a great irony. Suddenly, the sound of rustling came from the woods, and Danzo came out with a group of Konoha ninjas. Only 10 people scared the allied ninjas into panic. They huddled together to barely withstand the great pressure in their hearts. Looking at the terrified eyes in front of him, Danzo smiled, held a saber flower in his hand, and slowly retracted the black saber into its scabbard. Even though there were thousands of troops ahead, it couldn't bring him the slightest pressure. The three shadows were not in the main force, and the third generation Ai, the next generation Raikage candidate, became the supreme leader of the coalition forces. He stepped forward bravely, concealing his inner fear, and said, Shimura Danzo. This is the boundary line between the two countries, you can't cross the line. This stern look had no deterrent effect at all. Danzo put the black knife on his back and walked in front of the stone tablet. This action made all the ninjas' sweaty palms nervously, afraid that the guy in front of them would cross the national border. But Danzo stopped in front of the stone tablet, grinned, and his 8 big white teeth were shining brightly in the sun. Okay. I'm not over the line. Before the coalition ninjas breathed a sigh of relief, they saw Danzo lifting the steel and walking forward 12 steps with a thump. Every time Danzo takes a step forward, the coalition ninjas take a step back, uniformly. Third Eye looked at Danzo's operation and couldn't help but said, Didn't you say you didn't pass the line? This is wrong, you deceived me. He put down the steel, looked at the third generation Eye, put his hands on the steel, and asked. Have I ever had a line? Third Eye held his breath and shook his head. Then it's over. This battle has been fought for 12 months, and I've taken 12 steps. Isn't it reasonable? Reasonable. Looking at Danzo in the steel that seemed to be smiling but not smiling, he could only nod helplessly. A defeated general is not qualified to negotiate terms, and he, who lived in Yunnan village since he was a child, knows this very well. Shao Ai, let me tell you one word. Putting away the smile on his face, Danzo's eyes were filled with a terrifying pressure, which made all the ninjas of the coalition army tremble. Those who offend Konoha will be punished no matter how far away they are. After finishing speaking, he patted the steel. Don't say that you didn't predict it. Konoha calendar 22 years. Konoha once again thwarted Sankage's ambitions. For the first time in ninja history, the troops jointly dispatched by the 3 major shadow villages were defeated by Konoha. The war has shifted from group warfare to 3-front confrontation, and the situation has turned for the better. In the battle with the largest number of participants in history, Konoha sent 10,000 warriors to fight bloody battles with more than 30,000 coalition ninjas. More than 120 enemies were killed, and 50 martyrs were lost. Excluding the dead more than 1,000 Black Shadow ninjas, there are also 1,000 living Konoha ninjas who will stay here forever. This is still the result of having a system of medical ninjas. It is said that less than half of the ninjas died directly on the battlefield, and more of them died from post-war infections. As long as Konoha's ninjas don't die on the battlefield, they can basically be rescued in the field hospital. It is because of some disadvantages of medical ninjutsu that their lifespan may be shortened. After all, the essence of medical ninjutsu is to stimulate cell activity. This astonishing death rate was born precisely because of the medical ninja system promoted by Danzo. It can be said that the wounded survived thanks to Shimura Danzo, which once again gained him a lot of prestige. After this battle, Danzo's reputation can be said to be extremely high in Konoha. Whether it is leading the root ninja to destroy the enemy's logistics supplies, or holding the three shadows behind the door, commanding the large army to fight, he has shown an extraordinary demeanor. The victory of the war has Danzo's 3-point factor, and the credit is extremely high. Even if he immediately takes over as the third Hokage, it won't cause too much controversy. Everyone believes that as long as he takes over as the third generation of Hokage, he will definitely lead the village to a more brilliant future. As for whether Senju Tobirama will be wary of Danzo because of this, he can only say hee. The only thought in my heart is to help Danzo to the position of Hokage as soon as possible, and then go to enjoy Qingfu by myself. There are piles of documents piled up in the office, and Tobirama can't wait for someone who has been taken advantage of quickly to take over. Seeing the idle appearance of this silly apprentice of Danzo every day, his teeth itch. I am extremely busy, but he is happily listening to the music. Damn, so envious. I wanted to grab him to help, but every time I was like a loach, I couldn't catch him at all. In desperation, he could only develop a telescopic technique and send Anbu to stop him in advance, so that he could honestly assist in handling government affairs. The brightly lit Konoha camp was filled with the aroma of wine, and the amber wine soothed the ninjas who had been depressed for a whole year, and everyone was immersed in laughter. The fresh meat is sizzling under the flames, and the fat drips down the iron skewers. The browned skin is extremely attractive, supplemented with special seasonings, and the aroma is tangy. We won. Ha ha ha. Finally we can go home. I don't know if the little guy at home still recognizes his father. Sarutobi Hiruzen seemed to be drunk, holding his wine glass high, laughing happily, running around in the camp. After a long time, there was not a single drop of wine in his hand missing. The light in his eyes betrayed the fact that he was still awake. Monkey. Why don't you raise fish here? Drink. The sharp-eyed Danzo grabbed Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was passing by, and drank him down with the wine bottle in his hand. Hey, don't, my wife is also in day camp tonight. Gollum. Soon the bottle was empty, and Sarutobi Hiruzen also fell to the ground, snoring loudly. Danzo looked drunkenly at the empty bottle in his hand, then at Hiruzen Sarutobi, who fell on the ground, and touched the back of his head. The fruit wine should not have this power. Turning the bottle to look, 3 large characters came into view. Boring, down, donkey. Hey, I took the wrong drink. Sitting cheerfully beside Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was already asleep, he hiccuped. Uzumaki Ashina wobbled and sat next to Danzo, took a big sip, and the wine dripped down the white beard on the ground. Danzo grabbed the wine gourd in his hand, took a sip, and said with a smile. Brother Ashina, how old are you, and you still drink so much wine? Whirlpool Lumming snatched the gourd again, took another sip of wine, and said with a smile, Stinky boy, you know what a pee. It's not like I didn't have a doctor to persuade me before. He casually took the wine bottle from a passing person, took a sip, and asked casually, and then? Hey, hello, those who persuaded me died before me. The sip of wine that had just been taken into his mouth was immediately sprayed out, and he silently raised his thumb. You really are, with Danzo's mouth, he didn't know what to say, clinked glasses with the wine bottle to the wine gourd, and drank it on his own. The wine gourd was placed above his mouth, and he shook it vigorously, but there was no more drop of wine, and his dim eyes searched around. Hey, there's no wine. Danzo's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he saw Uzumaki Ashina's flushed face from the corner of his eye, pretending to be drunk, and took another bottle of wine on the table in his hand, and there were 3 large characters, Lao Baigan, holding back a smile and handing it over. I have, by the way, I have something to tell you. Uzumaki Ashina took over, and suddenly shuddered, but he didn't take it seriously, and still replied in a daze. What's the matter? Don't worry, as long as my brother has it, I'll bring it to you. How are you thinking about the Uzumaki clan joining my hidden leaf village? These words made Uzumaki Ashina sober up, hiccuped, and shook his head to wake up. Herp. What's this? Don't worry, brother, drink some wine to moisten your throat before we talk. Seeing that he was waking up, Danzo hurriedly put the mouth of the bottle in his hand next to his mouth, poured it directly into him, and blew half of the bottle in at once. Uzumaki Ashina's sobriety finally disappeared, coupled with Danzo's praise from time to time. He patted himself on the chest immediately. Don't worry, brother, no problem, no problem. Draw another bet. The corner of Danzo's mouth curled up, and he took out a contract from his sleeve. The content is that the head of the Uzumaki clan voluntarily merged the Uzumaki clan into the Hidden Leaf Village. At this time, Uzumaki Ashina vaguely felt something was wrong, but the alcohol paralyzed his nerves and slowed down his reaction speed, so he was led by the nose by Danzo for a while, and signed his name in a daze. After signing, Uzumaki Ashina couldn't take it anymore, and fell to the ground, hugging Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was also on the ground, and fell asleep. Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was in his sleep, felt that someone was beside him. A strange smile appeared on his face. He hugged Uzumaki Ashina, and kept muttering, wife, wife. Seeing this situation, Danzo turned his head silently, made seals with his hands, took out a camera from the scroll, and kept pressing the shutter to record this beautiful moment. If Uzumaki Ashina wakes up and refuses to admit it, then this photo may be accidentally exposed. His subordinates are in control of the largest newspaper in the Land of Fire. As for Sarutobi Hiruzen's feelings, it's all for the village. I can only feel sorry for him. At the same time, the other hand made a mudra, summoning a shadow clone to call Sarutobi Lake Biwa. After all, Sarutobi Hiruzen's movements are getting bigger and bigger. As his good big brother, Danzo said that he can't be allowed to sink like this, and if he doesn't call his wife over, he's really afraid that something will happen. Definitely not because of my bad taste. He, Shimura Danzo, is a well-known gentleman in Konoha. If you ignore the camera that is set up next to the corner. Shimura Danzo. Uzumaki Ashina held the contract signed last night, and aggressively lifted the curtain of the tent, blushing and yelling at the man lying on the bed in front of him. Oh, what are you doing so loudly in the early morning? The sleepy-eyed Danzo stretched, rubbed his eyes, and looked innocent, as if it had nothing to do with him. Are you still pretending? No wonder I drank so much wine last night, so you brat was already prepared. Slapping the treaty on the table, Uzumaki Ashina looked at him like this, and his anger continued to burst out. Picking up the treaty and looking at it, Danzo slapped his forehead, looked like he just remembered, raised his head, grinned and said, "Oh, you said this. This is something you promised yourself last night. It's none of my business." Uzumaki Ashina took the treaty back, looked at the treaty again, just wanted to slap himself last night, thought about it again, raised his eyebrows and said teasingly, "Damn it, it's a mistake to drink, it's a mistake to drink. Since you're a little bastard, aren't you afraid that I won't admit it? Oops, what's missing?" As soon as the words fell, Danzo exclaimed, and a photo floated along the wind to Uzumaki Ashina's feet. Curiosity drove him to pick it up. When he saw it, the expression on his face suddenly became complicated. HMPH, naive, I want to make it difficult for this old man. The old man eats more salt than your kid eats. Almost instantly, the photo in his hand became shattered. Uzumaki Ashina regained his complacent expression, but before he could smile, he saw Danzo holding the familiar photo again. For such an important thing, of course you have to prepare dozens or hundreds of copies, so as not to accidentally lose it. The corner of Danzo's mouth twitched, deliberately emphasizing the throw. Just a photo. With a pale complexion, Uzumaki Ashina gritted her teeth, and before she could finish her sentence, something rolled to her feet again, and Danzo's almost unconcealable laughter came from her ears. What dropped again? Uzumaki Ashina, who had a bad premonition, lowered his head stiffly. A videotape suddenly appeared in front of his eyes, and a terrible guess appeared in his mind. Looking at the smiling man in front of him, he felt a sense of powerlessness, waved his hand, and raised his thumb. Danzo, as expected of you, this thing won't be. I saw Danzo nodding with a smile, looking like a gentleman, and the last trace of happiness in my heart was extinguished. Brother Ashina, you don't want to see this matter spread, do you? Danzo got off the bed, bent down, picked up the videotape, and said softly. Uzumaki Ashina's face changed from green to pale, and suddenly he laughed loudly, hugging Danzo's shoulder. Ha 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 ha, who are we brothers? Don't worry, you know who I am, and we will do what we promised. But this photo and video will show you. What photos and videotapes? But when he saw Danzo's confused face, he wanted to get angry, but when he thought of something, he laughed again. That's right. Right. What photos and videotapes? Nothing. I'm so confused. In the future, we will be a villager, but we need to help each other and move around more. Sure. Danzo laughed like a fox. Uzumaki Ashina also laughed, but felt a little aggrieved. Stepping out of the tent, looking at the clear sky, I fell into memories. At that time, the kid Senjujuma insisted on creating Uzumaki no matter how much he invited him, but he never expected to get the Tao in the hands of this brat Danzo. It's really unpredictable. The large intestine wraps the small intestine. However, this is also a good thing. In the future, Konoha will definitely develop better under this stinky boy, restore the glory of the first generation, and truly become the overlord in the ninja world that no one dares to touch. Not for any reason, just because his hands are dark enough and ruthless enough. Even an old man like himself dares to make shameless calculations. There is nothing he can't do. We can't beat it, so join in. At least Danzo should. Maybe, probably not cheat his own people, right? At this moment, the curtain of the tent next to him was lifted, and Sarutobi Hiruzen, with a bruised nose and swollen face, staggered out while leaning on the wall. An elite Jonin almost couldn't stand still. When he saw Uzumaki Ashina, his face froze, and he forced a smile to say hello. Sarutobi Bawako walked out with a ruddy face, and naturally supported his arm, but from Uzumaki Ashina's perspective, at the moment the two touched, Sarutobi Hiruzen's whole body visibly trembled. When Sarutobi Bawako saw Uzumaki Ashina, the smile on his face disappeared immediately, and he snorted triumphantly, and then pulled Sarutobi Hiruzen towards the medical ninja camp. I just feel that the inexplicable Uzumaki Ashina silently swallowed the idea just now. This guy Danzo is much darker than he thought, and even his teammates are cheating. You won't fall into the wolf's den, will you? Looking at Sarutobi Hiruzen staggering back, he made a secret decision in his heart. No matter what, the Uzumaki clan's clan should stay away from the Shimura clan and its roots. Otherwise, I don't know when I was sold. Half a month later. In the early morning, the entrance of the village is bustling with crowds of expectant people. Everyone is looking forward to their relatives who have been thinking about them for a year. The news of Konoha's victory has already been sent back to the village by telegram, and the festive atmosphere reverberates throughout Konoha. Their heroic fighters once again drove away the malicious wolves and tigers, and defended their families. A naughty boy who climbed up the big tree saw many figures in the distance, and immediately shouted excitedly. Here we come. Master Danzo brought them back. The Konoha ninjas who came back all had smiles on their faces. Although they were dusty, the village they were willing to sacrifice their lives for was in front of them. Now they finally returned to their home. Unexpectedly, they won this battle, and it was a big victory. Senju Tobarama walked in front of everyone, and looked at the village that was faintly visible in the distance, and couldn't help but smile on his face. Big brother's hard work. I guarded it myself. In the future, there will be no need to deploy so many ninjas at the border, and only need to take turns from time to time. Now that the war has come to a lull, as long as Sankage and their IQS are online, there will be no more large-scale wars. After all, they also need time to recuperate and replenish the damaged source of troops. This war has brought at least 10 years of peace. Another piece of good news is that the hard bone of Uzumaki village has been gnawed down by Danzo. Uzumaki village's sealing technique has been coveted for a long time. Every year, people are sent to persuade Uzumaki Ashina to join Muya village, but unfortunately they are all ignored. I and my elder brother tried their best to change Uzumaki Ashina's old and stubborn thinking. Now that he is taken down by his stupid apprentice, I really don't know what method he used. The next plan is to try to completely knock down the 3 major shadow villages within a year, sign a peace treaty, and make some money by the way. There is also the matter of arranging for the Uzumaki clan to join Konoha, and finding a suitable clan land for them, and they can really integrate into the village in about half a year. Just don't know why, Uzumaki Ashina strongly requested to stay away from the place where Danzo lived. What deceit did that apprentice of his own do? I really don't know who I learned from with my mind full of deceitful ideas. It's not at all like myself, an upright gentleman. Senju Fuzen looked up at Danzo who was holding Uzumaki Ashina, and shook his head in disgust. Brother Ashina, I remember that there is an open space between the root and the Shimura clan. It's quite big. Think about it. Uzumaki Ashina's face froze immediately, and he forced a smile and said, "Ha ha ha, I will consider it." Danzo's eyes flickered, and the corners of his mouth curled up. When he returned to the village next time, he would ask the teacher to be in charge of the Uzumaki clan. He suddenly remembered something and asked, "Sister Lu Gan is the one who didn't see her this time?" When mentioning the granddaughter Uzumaki Lugan, Uzumaki Ashina smiled and said cheerfully, "Your sister Lugan is pregnant." "Pregnant? When will you be born? Have you thought about the name?" "According to the date, it will probably be born next year. The medical ninja went to see it. It should be a girl. The name has already been thought of, and it is called Kushina Uzumaki." Uzumaki Ashina smiled and replied that he was about to embrace his great-granddaughter. By that time, the 4 generations would live under the same roof, and the days would be beautiful, even when the gods came. He turned his eyes and looked at Danzo. At that time, let Ju Shinai worship this kid as a godfather. Even if he can't learn his tricks, it's good to learn a few self-defense skills. He can't still cheat on his daughter, can he? While speaking, the carriage got closer and closer, and it had already arrived at the entrance of Konoha village. Seeing the smiles of the villagers, Danzo also laughed from the bottom of his heart. The first to come to Danzo was a group of children from the school, who surrounded him chattering. Although Danzo likes to assign homework to them, he likes to ask students to recite at any time, like. But no matter what, he is also his class teacher. I haven't seen him for a year, so I miss him. Teacher Danzo. Welcome back to the village. Ha ha ha, thank you. Have you finished all the homework assigned to you? A group of students look at me. I look at you, let out a strange cry, and immediately disperse like birds and beasts. It really is the devil's style of Mr. Danzo, which is really familiar. As for homework, it is not homework if it is not completed on the last day. Seeing their energetic appearance, Danzo smiled. As soon as they entered the village, all the ninjas looked for familiar figures and returned to the home they had missed for a year. Elderly parents support each other and lead their eternal children. The lovers who love each other embrace each other and tell their long-separated feelings. The young children jumped on the strong father, proud of having such a heroic father. Seeing the laughter of his subordinates around him, Danzo also searched for the lovely person he had been thinking about for a long time in the crowd. Suddenly, a figure in the crowd instantly attracted him. His eyes crossed the crowd and locked on that beautiful figure. Shimura Kinyi smiled at him with tears in his eyes as if shining. The two looked at each other and smiled, and the noisy sounds around them seemed to disappear at this moment. Combined ninjutsu. Toad oil flame bullet. The Huo Dun mixed with toad oil devoured several wooden targets in front of him, and even burned blazingly on the water surface of the stream. The scorching temperature made everyone standing next to him take a step back, and Danzo narrowed his eyes. This power is hard to extinguish by ordinary water escape. Sure enough, the battlefield is the most tempering place, and this little guy Jiraiya has walked out of his own way. Jiraiya also watched his successful release of this ninjutsu, couldn't help jumping up excitedly, gave Toad Chu a high five, looked at Danzo, and said expectantly, "Brother Danzo, how about my self-made ninjutsu?" Nodding his head slightly, Danzo also laughed. There is nothing better than growing up from his juniors. Just judging from the power of this technique, Jiraiya, you can already be rated as a special ninja. Ha ha ha, I knew that my uncle was born extraordinary. Having been praised by the big brother he admired since he was a child, Jiraiya looked at Orochimaru, raised his head slightly, and looked very proud. Jiraiya, you are not bad. Tsunade bounced to his side, raised his arm and patted Jiraiya's shoulder. The huge force almost knocked him into the soil. Orochimaru squinted at Jiraiya, who was cheerful and happy, with a look of looking at a fool. His lips parted slightly. Fool, you are the slowest among us to reach this strength. Even Sanfun is faster than you. Nani. Hearing Orochimaru's words, Jiraiya looked in disbelief, and turned his head stiffly to look at Mifune, only to see him nodding while holding 3 samurai swords. The Tao of Hayate has been integrated into his body, majoring in the 3-sword-style swordsmanship taught by Danzo, and after abandoning the thick armor of the Iron Kingdom, his strength has gradually increased. Tsunade, you shouldn't be too. Tsunade smiled, and nodded slowly. After getting an affirmative reply, Jiraiya continued to look at Orochimaru unwillingly. You bastard, sooner or later, I will beat you. Don't think about it, snakes eat toads, and I'm already a Junin. After finishing speaking, he pulled off the coat on his body, and the Jonin vest suddenly appeared in the eyes of everyone. Ji Leia stood still. squatting in the corner and drawing circles silently. The world seemed to turn black and white in an instant, and a song seemed to be heard. The sky is blue, and there are thousands of paper cranes outside the window. A big warm hand covered Jiraiya's head, and a familiar voice reached his ears. Jiraiya, you have already done a good job, you don't need to compare yourself with anyone, as long as you improve a little bit every day. Got it. Brother Danzo, I'm not a child anymore, can you stop rubbing my head all the time? Jiraiya complained, but a smile appeared on his face again. Okay. Danzo agreed with a smile, but the movement of his hands didn't stop. From Danzo's point of view, Jiraiya has already done a good job. He has neither Tsunade's Senju blood nor Orochimaru's ninjutsu talent, and even his understanding is not as good as Mifune. It is such a three-nose person who, relying on his own persistence, keeps chasing these geniuses. When he experiences every setback, he can adjust back in a very short time, never give up, and is as proud as a scorching sun. Of course, each of my disciples has their own shining points, and everyone is not a mediocre person. They don't want to walk on the road they have already walked, and they want to explore their own path even if they are braved by thorns. All he can do is try to smooth the road for them so that they can run more freely. As for myself, but there is a little achievement. He is just an ordinary founder of Hayate Kendo, the ruler of the Dark World, the proudest disciple of Konoha's second generation of Hokage, the most powerful successor of the third generation of Hokage, and the no one under the 5 cages of the current ninja world. Under these titles, are you proud of yourself? Number. Still silently working hard in Konoha. Get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, the day's plan is in the morning, brush your teeth, wash your face, have breakfast, and then go back to sleep to stay energetic. Wake up at 3 noon, after a simple lunch of 8 dishes and 1 soup, start the daily swordsmanship practice, which lasts 3 minutes and 1 second, and you can do anything with only of enthusiasm. After the swordsmanship practice, it is necessary to relax. A combination of work and rest is the correct way. From 1 o'clock, I will travel to and from various restaurants in Konoha, condolences to the dancing girls, and eagerly care for the bottom staff. At 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I went to the bathing city to wash off the sweat of a day's hard work. Being clean is a respect for myself and others. Danzo still pays great attention to politeness. When the night comes, be a night watchman in the night, eat from the street to the end of the snack street, and ensure the quality of various foods to ensure the food safety of Konoha residents. At 12 o'clock in the evening, sneak into the bar secretly, dance with the villagers, don't have any airs of a strong man, and investigate whether there are any illegal and criminal acts, and if there are any, send them to prison, and have a long memory. As for the money on your body? That's a reward for being brave. Don't let any righteous man down, start with yourself. At 3 o'clock in the morning, go home to sleep and maintain a regular work and rest, so that the body can be healthy. After all, health preservation must start from an early age. I just don't know why I'm so busy. Teacher Tobarama still sees me as unhappy. Isn't it because I have a million dark circles under my eyes? Always thinking of grabbing himself to help him with government affairs. I used to be able to run around Anbu, but now I don't know why. It's getting more and more difficult. When I think of squeezing out my substantial training time to read those documents, Danzo's head gets dizzy. God is sorry to see, I am really practicing regularly, so distressed. Goodbye Danzo-sensei. Goodbye, be careful on the road. In the afterglow of the setting sun, the whole village seems to be covered with a layer of golden light, and the tall buildings cast dark shadows in the sun. At the gate of Konoha Academy, the last student left shaking his hand at Danzo. Both of them were smiling, as gentle as the whitest snow in the world. Watching the students leave his sight safely, the smile on Danzo's face slowly disappeared, he hooked his right hand, and a black shadow emerged from the shadow. It was Ji-Yu Chuanje who was wearing Niya's mask, wearing black clothes looming in the darkness, as if he was not in this space. As a number 1 figure in the entire underground world of the ninja world, one of the generals of the Black Shadow mercenary group, he appeared in Konoha in a grand manner at this time, and the person who met him was the successor of one of the 5 major ninja villages recognized by the ninja world. Facing Danzo, Ji-Yu Chuanje deeply lowered his proud head, his eyes under the demon mask were full of enthusiasm. This man in front of him might really be able to change the entire ninja world. No, it should be called a revolution, an earth-shaking revolution. Why is the supreme leader of the country relying on the ridiculous blood rather than the wisdom of the body? Those officials who also rely on the hereditary system, even if they know that the daimyo is a complete fool, they will obey meekly, and use the whip of power to severely beat the lowest level of civilians who are the most worthy of protection. As for why? Just because they also rely on that thing as a fig leaf to cover up lying on the people to suck blood. Facing hunger and cold in the past, Ji Yuchuan would think that he was not working hard enough and had nothing to do with the people above him. It seemed that he should pay half of the harvest from the land. It wasn't until Danzo pulled himself up and cleared his mind of the stupidity they imposed, that he realized that this world shouldn't be like this. They, the meat-eaters, blindfolded all the civilians because smart people discovered the secret of their rule. After all, the commoners can only be controlled when they are stupider than themselves. It's as if the animals in the mill are also covered with a strip of cloth, so that they can easily take away the fruits of people's lifelong hard work, but those animals still don't know everything, and their descendants still learn from their ancestors and pull the stone mill for the miller. The red book on the chest seems to have a temperature, exuding a unique light, so that Ji Yuchuanje, who shuttles through the dark world, will not indulge in the rotten pool water. Am I right? Mr. Tibetan Mission. Danzo looked at the golden leaves, his eyes were full of firmness, he tilted his head slightly, and asked softly, how is the implementation of the Spark project going? Hearing this safe voice, Furukawa raised his head slightly, and couldn't restrain his excitement at all. The first stage is completed. The number of black ninjas who can fight is 2,000, and the number of outer sects has reached, the ears and eyes are all over the ninja world. The second phase has started. The name Shingo flashed in his mind, and his body couldn't help shaking, not because of fear, but because of excitement. They are really working hard for the greatest cause of mankind, and they may still see the transformation of this world in their lifetime. The outer sect is the department of the Black Shadow Corps to attract talents. Thanks to the foolish project, they were able to recruit truly smart people and people with lofty ideals from all walks of life so smoothly. It's the second stage. The setting sun gradually sank down the mountain, and the last light disappeared on Danzo's face, but the street lamps on both sides of the road were lit up, providing people with never-ending light, and no longer needing to pray to the sun. Stretching out his hand to catch the light of the street lamp, Danzo smiled. This is the result of his influence on this world. He cannot accept the eternal darkness. Similarly, Danzo does not believe that the sky is blue, that thunder echoes, that dreams are false, and that death is unrewarding. The Spark Project is his greatest effort to change the world. He wants everyone to live with dignity. The first stage consolidates the power of the Shadow Corps and becomes an important giant in the dark world. Only by absorbing the nutrients of the black soil can the seeds grow into towering trees in the fastest time. Ji Yuchuanje took out a document and said excitedly, according to the plan for the second phase, in addition to Konoha Hidden Village, we have found many like-minded fighters in the other 4 major ninja villages. Most of them are civilian ninjas who imitated Konoha Academy, including 180 cloud ninjas, 220 rock ninjas, 350 fog ninjas, and the most sand ninjas, with a number of up to 500. Hearing this data, Danzo couldn't help laughing. Sure enough, they fell into their tricks. Ever since he proposed Konoha Academy to the teacher, he began to make arrangements. The 4 major ninja villages will never let go of this combat power after seeing the power of civilian ninjas, and this only needs one battle to verify. As for why the power of civilian ninjas was developed, one only needs to think about who held the knives in the ninja world before. Senju, Uchiha, Hyuga, Uzumaki, Ghost Lamp. Each bloodline ninja controls the sword. Don't they also use bloodline as a bond? This is also an alternative hereditary, but endowed with powerful power. What Danzo did was to use Konoha as a fulcrum to tilt up the entire ninja world, so that the 4 major ninja villages had to swallow this poison disguised as candy. Let the civilians with the most resistance become ninjas, pick up the knife, and clear the old thoughts in their minds. This is the second phase of the Spark Project. In the next time, there will be more and more civilian ninjas in the 4 great ninja villages. Even if Seeing knows this truth, they can't stop them, because even if their own village prohibits the appearance of civilian ninjas, other ninja villages will also appear. At that time, the hostile villages will rely on the huge power gap created by the civilian ninjas to swallow themselves. This is a conspiracy that the movie fans have to accept. As for Konoha, Danzo was about to say, is his business for so many years a fake? Konoha has already turned into Danzo. When the Shadows plan to take action against the Shadow mercenary group that wants to overthrow everything, it means that the Spark Project has entered the 3rd stage. By that time, Danzo was already the 3rd generation of Hokage, and Konoha under his intentional control must be the village least affected by the Shadow Corps, with the most complete force preservation. Who should give up the position of commander-in-chief of the 5 villages alliance? The leader of the Baidao One Village Alliance, the lord of the Black Shadow Corps of the Underworld. This wave, the left hand hits the right hand. Danzo wanted to ask, who else is there? Knock knock knock. Please come in. Senju, who was processing the documents, heard a knock on the door and said without raising his head. Danzo poked his head through the door panel, looked at his teacher, smiled flatteringly, and took out the things he bought. Teacher, this is the grilled fish I bought for you. Hey, you stinky boy can go to the Three Treasures Hall for nothing. Tell me, what did you do again? Tobima put down the pen in his hand, raised his eyebrows, and asked with interest. Walking into the office slowly, Danzo was about to speak, when he suddenly saw a crystal ball on the table, and his eyes lit up. Is this a telescope technique? Could it be that my teacher is a smoldering monster like a monkey? No wonder the monkey with thick eyebrows and big eyes will turn into that look in the future. It turns out that the upper beam is not straight and the lower beam is crooked. Oh Tui, I really don't want to be in the same boat as monkeys. But this thing is pretty good for monitoring. I have to convince the teacher to teach me this technique. As he is a Danzo, he will definitely not use it for anything. Seeing that Danzo didn't speak for a while, and stared straight at his own crystal ball, his heart clicked. Did this kid know that he had arranged for someone to block him in advance through the telescope technique? After coughing, Tobirama was about to speak, but Danzo also started to speak. That. Looking up, he saw Danzo looking at him with extremely strange eyes, and suddenly understood what he was thinking in his mind, and threw the document in his hand over. Speak if you have something to say, fart if you have something to say. If you have nothing to do, help me with government affairs. I'm having a headache right now. Danzo happily took the file, and the moment he saw the name of the file, the smile on his face froze. The above is the order of the Fire Country Daimyo to order Hokage to eliminate the active revolutionaries in the Fire Country. Once you hold the red book, kill it directly. You would rather kill 1,000 by mistake than let one go. His heart sank again and again. It seemed that the daimyo had discovered the existence of the revolutionaries. Danzo didn't tell the purpose of the trip until Token urged him. It's my disciple who applied to be promoted to the Jonin assessment for Jiraiya, but I don't know how Mifune will arrange it. His strength has also reached the level of a special Jnin. 4 Jonin in one discipline. Your ability to teach your disciples is almost catching up to mine. Mifune, he is indeed difficult to arrange. It depends on what you think. Hearing this news, Tobirama couldn't help laughing. These disciples of his own are all quite talented, and the strength of Jonin at this level is definitely the high-level combat power of the village. As for Mifune, although he is a disciple of Danzo, his other identity is the heir of the general of the Iron Kingdom, and the strength of each general of the Iron Kingdom is nothing more than Jonin. That is to say, Mifune is now qualified to inherit the position of general. Konoha can't casually promote such a sensitive person to Jonin. After all, Mifune is still a samurai, which is different from ninjas. Moreover, the Iron Country is known as a permanent neutral country. Konoha's promotion will more or less affect Mifune himself. Of course, this is definitely a good thing for Konoha and Tobirama. After all, being able to win over the heir of a general of a country means that Konoha has an indestructible ally, and the samurai is also a force that cannot be underestimated. But who made Mifune a disciple of Danzo? In Tobirama's heart, Konoha will have a Danzo in the future, and it will be better than the thousands of troops of the Iron Kingdom. I understand. Knowing that his teacher gave him the right to choose, Danzo nodded and wanted to leave the office. The moment the door was opened, there was a sound from behind the door. Wait a moment. Danzo turned his head slowly, and when he saw something in his hand, he couldn't believe his eyes. It was like a thunderbolt hit the head, or someone poured cold water from head to toe, and his pupils suddenly became bigger. What he was holding in his hand was the book, Spark, written by Danzo. I saw that there was no smile on Tobirama's face, and his expression was thought-provoking. He stared closely at Danzo's eyes, and said word by word. How are you going to explain this book, Mr. Zhangtuan? Now that you know, why do you ask me, teacher? With his brain running wildly, Danzo went straight to the sofa, sat down on his buttocks, and looked towards Tobima. He slammed the tabletop, and the sound resounded throughout the office. Tobirama stood up, looking at Danzo with eagle-like pupils. Do you know what you are doing? You are destroying the Konoha that your uncle, my eldest brother, spent his whole life guarding. The Kingdom of Fire established. You are still trying to overthrow the existing order of this huge ninja world. You are making enemies with the group of people who stand at the top of this world. Then teacher, do you support me? Danzo raised his head slowly, and laughed like a child. His eyes were full of ideal flames, and the firm aura on his body made Tobirama stunned. Don't you understand what I said? If you choose this path, you will face a more dangerous situation than what Konoha faced before. For Ying and the daimyos, this is a real and endless hatred. Even, you are making an enemy of me, Hokage. The moment the last sentence fell, Tobirama's figure flashed and appeared behind Danzo, with a sharp kunai against his neck, and with just one force, he would die on the spot. Now with a move of my hand, the revolutionaries that give me a headache will disappear completely. So, teacher, do you support me? Danzo asked again with the same smile and slightly parted lips. Tobirama was close to Danzo's ear, staring at this disciple who had grown up since he was a child, and said softly. Danzo. As long as you give up this idea, I can pretend that nothing happened. You are the third Hokage of Konoha, sharing the entire Fire Kingdom with daimyo, and sitting above tens of millions of people. Don't you want to do that? It is indeed very tempting to be in a high position and be in charge of life and death, but these are not what Danzo wants. I would rather die straight than live in a twist. Kunai got very close to Danzo's neck, and even drew a line of blood. Danzo still said that sentence with a smile. Teacher, do you support me? Seeing that no matter what, Danzo did not give up his idea, he let out a long sigh, as if some burden had been unloaded, and kunai fell to the ground in his hands. I support. Then I'm not afraid anymore. It's just that you will definitely live very tired in the future. The office was quiet again, only two people whispering. The eagle is destined to soar in the sky in the future. As his teacher, the door is full of worries about him. But so what? The bastard disciple I taught can only be supported and let him fly. A gust of wind whizzed past my ears. With a bright smile, Danzo flew to the country of Uzumaki on Toothless Boy. The current Konoha is considered a complete basic system. I was worried that Tobirama-sensei would not support me. After all, although the existing order of the ninja world has been destroyed, it was created by Hashirama. Tokaima-sensei seems to have a little brother control attribute. If he was determined to stop him, then he really didn't know what to do. Konoha residents have more or less accepted their own ideas, and it is not difficult to incorporate them into the revolutionary ranks. The problem is mainly those big families. In the future, the Senju family can let go of their bloodlines and completely integrate into the residents of Konoha, which is the easiest family to solve. Although Uchiha is rebellious, but with Uchiha Kagami as his right-hand man, he is still at ease. The Hyuga family should be the most conservative family. I have said many times that there are still divisions of the main family. If you want to really eliminate this prejudice, you should wait until you really become Hokage. The rest is to gradually convince the Uzumaki clan who have not accepted their influence. Based on Danzo's understanding of Uzumaki Ashina, agreeing to integrate into Konoha is already the limit, and he will never accept handing over the Uzumaki clan's sealing technique to the village. Then Danzo can only wait for him to die before doing it. Anyway, he is still young and can afford it. Uzumaki Ashina is already old. The key thing to catch is the young people of the Whirlpool family. Now that Danzo has taken over the relocation agreement of the Uzumaki family, it is to test the acceptance of the younger generation's ideas. If it doesn't work, then start from the baby. After all, many sealing techniques of the Uzumaki family need the assistance of blood, so it is better to maintain a certain family model in the future. There is Hanzo in the Land of Rain, and with his prestige, he will be the future leader. That's easy. The Iron Country has 3 ships, which were first followed by the country's armed forces with the help of blood, and then liberated. Those are the allies who can be trusted, and the enemies are obvious. The names of the 4 major countries and the rest of the small countries in their national armed forces. After being infiltrated and thought spread by his own Shadow Corps, it can be regarded as laying a bomb inside the enemy, and it will be detonated at that time. It may have a crucial impact on the situation. Master Hokage, good news, good news. Outside the office, the smiling Nara staff officer opened the door with a letter. The door that was looking at the crystal ball hastily blocked the crystal ball, looked at the person coming, and joked intentionally or unintentionally. Huh? What kind of news can make our Nara patriarch so happy? Oh, Hokage-sama, you'll know it when you see it. Chief Nara handed the letter to Tobima, his face full of joy. Tobirama glanced at it strangely, took the letter, read it at a glance, and stood up excitedly. HMPH, Lei Ying finally couldn't hold on anymore. That letter was exactly the agreement book written by Reika G. The second-generation Reikage, who speaks gorgeous language and loves peace, hopes that the 2 countries will have peace talks again to avoid unnecessary casualties, but when they wrote this letter, They seem to have forgotten who started the war first. It's just that the second Raikage asked Hokage-sama to go to Yunnan village to sign the agreement in person. Is there any fraud in it? Nara Patriarch looked at the letter and said with a slight frown. Tobirama smiled. As an old opponent for so many years, he basically understood the shadow characters of each village. I know what the second Raikage is like. Since he talks about peace talks, it's peace talks. There's no need to worry about that. It's just that he wants to save face to disguise the fact that he was defeated. But, for some reason, Nara Patriarch always felt a little strange. Okay. I will take the shadow guards with me when the time comes. Fei Jian shook his hand with great confidence. Then do you want to wait for Captain Danzo to come back, and then go together? With the strength of Captain Danzo and Hokage-sama, we are not afraid even if the enemy cheats us. No, he is busy with the Uzumaki clan. This matter is also not a trivial matter. Besides, the village also needs someone to guard it. After pondering for a while, Tobirama shook his head, picked up the transfer order from the table and handed it to him. Clan Chief Nara, go and ask Sarutobi Hiruzen to come over, pack up your luggage, and set off tomorrow. The sooner a peace agreement is signed, the heroic soul of a soldier will be lost at the border. Walking to the window with her hands behind her back, looking at the lights of thousands of families, she said leisurely, Konoha, I can't bear the tears of a family anymore. Looking at Tobirama, who had made up his mind, the Nara Patriarch had no choice but to accept the order and suppress the uneasiness in his heart. Perhaps, I was too nervous. Country of Vortex. Uzumaki Ashina, who led a group of Uzumaki clansmen to stand at the entrance of the village to welcome them, looked at the comer, and his complexion instantly collapsed. The welcome signs that were waved vigorously also became weak. Toothless Boy flapped his wings and landed on the ground, a burst of smoke scattered in all directions. Danzo jumped off the dragon's back with a bright smile on his face. Hello everyone. Uzumaki Ashina reluctantly greeted him with a smile. Danzo, why are you here to be the person in charge of my Uzumaki clan? Raising his eyebrows, Danzo said with a half smile. The teacher asked me to take over. Why? Not welcome. Uzumaki Ashina quickly waved his hand and asked what the clansman had always wanted to ask. No way, this is what makes us flourish. Well, the clan that I chose from the Whirlpool clan has chosen. Of course, it must be next to my Shimura clan. How about it? How is my brother treating you? This. Uzumaki Ashina couldn't keep the smile on his face anymore, it was clearly arranged by this kid. Seeing his expression, Danzo raised his forehead and said as if talking to himself. That's such a pity. The location is within the second ring road of my Muya village. One house can buy 5 houses in Wuyan village. If you are not satisfied, you can change it. What? Uzumaki Luken, who had been standing behind Uzumaki Ashina, kicked him directly, rubbed him, and held Danzo's hand with a carefree look. Don't. Okay, great, he was too excited just now. Danzo was dumbfounded seeing her so fierce, and said for a long time. Sister Lugan, you are not pregnant, you can still do this. Hey, the man is informal, let's go and drink. As soon as Uzumaki Luken grabbed Danzo's hand, he walked into the village. Limited by Kushina, Danzo didn't dare to shake it off too hard. In desperation, he could only be pulled. He just used his strength secretly to lead her to Uzumaki Ashina's wine cellar. Danzo has been craving that guy's wine for a long time, but unfortunately he has too strict defense and has been difficult to attack. Now I can just take advantage of this opportunity to make a move. Brother Ashina, you have to be optimistic. It's not that I'm going to drink your wine. I really can't help myself. Cloud Nin Village. The oil lamps in the aisle were burning, sizzling, and they were swayed by the wind brought by the people passing by. Small orange flames shone in the dimly lit room. Similarly, it also illuminated the faces of the participants. If Raikage was present, they would definitely be surprised. This included most of the high-level Hawk faction in the village. They are all absolute main fighters, and they are extremely dissatisfied with the peace agreement that Lei Ying pushed against all opinions. Bastard. The death of so many brothers, peace is peace. This coward Raikage. It's hard to work together with Onein and Iwanin to swallow so much land. Just after eating it, it's still hot in the stomach. Let's spit it out. I'll go to you mad. These are all good cultivated land. It's not at all like the Gobi in my country of thunder. Hearing everyone's complaints, Ginkaku and his confidants looked at each other, and they all saw their respective ambitions. Lei Ying had been sitting in the seat for so many years, and it was time to give it up to the two brothers. This time, Just taking advantage of the dissatisfaction of the high-level hawks in the village, a bloody storm was set off. Thinking of this, the tailed beast chakra in their bodies was boiling, eager for blood. Now was the perfect opportunity. Ginkaku coughed and suppressed everyone's conversation. Everyone, since this is the case, why don't we change to rakeage? Rumble. There were dark clouds outside the window, and a streak of silver-white horses fell on the ground and shone on the pale faces of everyone. After a while, a middle-aged man with a beard stood up. Master Jinzhao, do you know what you were talking about? You were wrong. We have different opinions and do not conspire with each other. I will leave. Then turn around and leave. Another man with a resolute face slapped the table with one hand, stood up, glared at Ginkaku, and yelled loudly. Trying to eat shadows in vain. This has never happened in the entire ninja world. You are a traitor. He also followed the previous person out of the room. Ginkaku ignored the two's remarks, smiled and said to the people who were still sitting in the chair. Who else thinks the same as the two of them? Stand up and leave, I don't have to pursue it. As soon as this sentence was said, several people got up and left. Although they are the main combat faction, they are also loyal to rakeage. Opposition to peace does not conflict with allegiance to rakeage. When they first arrived, they thought it was just a meeting planned by a war faction to oppose rakeage's decision. They didn't expect Jinzhao's ambition to be so big. The people sitting on the chairs have different thoughts, and several people have twinkling eyes. They are neutrals. This matter is too important, and some of them don't want to participate, but once it succeeds, the benefits will be huge. What? Just when they were hesitating, a few screams came from the aisle, which made the hearts of everyone still seated tremble. The dark corridor seems to be swallowing the candlelight in the room, which is eerie. A man covered in blood fled back, staggered to Ginkaku's feet, and grabbed his trouser legs tightly. Didn't you say let us go? The guy who broke his promise. My elder brother said to let you go, but I, Ginkaku, didn't say that. Holding a plantain fan, Ginkaku walked out of the dark corridor with a grin on his face. This is the 6 ninja tools. A person sitting in the seat murmured while looking at what he was holding in his hand. The injured looked at Jinzhao, who came out of the darkness, and backed away in fright. No, no. Let me go, I promise to join you. Jinzhao walked slowly to Jinzhao's side, ignored his words, and stomped on the injured man's head with one foot, and with the other force. There were more corpses on the ground. The smell of blood filled the whole room. Ginkaku stood up with a smile, and said kindly. Everyone, now, who is in favor and who is against? You can tell, I am very democratic. Looking at the golden and silver horns, the people in the seats quickly flattered and complimented, for fear that they would follow in their footsteps if they were too slow. Yes. We agree. Whoever does not support, I will be the first to oppose him. Ginkaku and Kinkaku looked at each other and smiled wildly. Now, great things can be accomplished. The people in the seats also laughed, and the cheerful laughter echoed in the room, as if to dilute the smell of blood a little. Ginkaku raised his wineglass to the rest of the piece. Everyone raised their wineglasses and said, respect for peace.